Hi, I'm Steve Jones from SQL Server Central and Redgate Software. And I want to talk to you today about how you kind of pick a starting place in Test Data Manager for your own customized series of things. So I wrote this blog post here that talks about picking a starting table. I'm actually able to have to re-record this thing because I, in fact, hadn't set up the microphone correctly. So let's go through this in general. Now, this is based on the TDM automasculet from Alex Yates. I actually have that here. If I look at this and I do a status, you'll see it's there, and remit is V. So you can see I'm pointed to Alex's upstream, but I have my own fork of it. So let's start running this, right? So /run automasculet. Now you can see by default, I'm looking for these BB things, and I've set a backup path in here. So it's doing the restores right now. And once those are done, it's ready to run the subsetter. Now, let's just do this. We'll refresh this so we see that we have our databases. If I run this right now, you'll see I've got, 16,000 players here. We'll run the subset thing, the same thing. I've got 16,000 players. Makes perfect sense because we've just done the restores. Let's now run the subsetter. So we'll pick this and we'll say yes, continue. We'll run the subset command. This takes about 8-9 seconds, I think, to run in general on my machine, which is pretty quick, right? Certainly pretty quick. And now if I look at the subset, I've got about 10% of every table. So players are at 1644 instead of 16,000. Pitching post 41 instead of 461. Roughly 10%. But I've got 10% of every table, and I don't really have a relationship in any place. So in my post, actually, let's see if I can find that query. I want to show you that if I went down and looked at this, well, I could do it. Let's pick player 11. So select from players where player ID is equal to 11, right? So if I run this query, well, that doesn't work at all, right? I think I need a Laman ID, so let's change that to Laman ID, right? So if I run this, we get data, right? But what if I do this thing where I'm going to take this down, I'm going to say inner join batting on the player ID, inner join, fielding on, we'll do player ID as well. Okay. So now what happens if I try to look for data? We don't get anything. And the reason is there's no real relationships between these tables. It's just randomly picked data in each one. Now we'll solve that problem in another one, but how do I get started with certain tables? So I'm going to run this query on the source, right? This is the full size. There's 1,800 players born in California. Okay. Which makes perfect sense, right? And if I were to do a count here from players, I guess I could run that other one. We get 1644. So I obviously don't have all the California players. And I would guess, let's just say where, that's really annoying, birth state is equal to California, right? So if I did this, so I've got, well, about 10%, right? Average sampling makes sense. But I want to control this better because I want to do some development against players from California. So in the automasculet, you'll see that there's this subsetter options file, and it's pointed to this Northwind file. Not very helpful. I've actually made a copy of this in another folder where I set players and I set the birth state equal to California, which is what I want to show. So I want to use that file. So what I'm going to do is come back here to my automasculet. I'm going to steal this command right here. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to paste it in there. Now I'm going to add this parameter, this options file, and I'm going to grab that file. So I'm going to get this path. And then what I'm going to do is grab this file name. And now what I've done is I'm saying use this option file. And that ran very quickly. So now, of course, 1,800 there. What if I run this? Well, now it says 1,800, and you see that I only have 1,800 players here, right? Which is kind of fantastic. I have no teams as well and other stuff. But I could add more to this. So let's go to this options file. And because this is an array, right, what I can do is I can do a comma, and let's copy this. And we'll change this to teams. And we'll say year ID is equal to 2020. Let's see what does that actually do? If I said select count from teams where year 2020. All right, so if I did this, I don't get anything. 2030. Oh, what if I say greater than? Let's do this. 360, right? So we'll say greater than 2000 as a filter, right? So now I'm just going to rerun that same command. I've changed my options file, and I don't know how to do JSON apparently, so let's run that again. Again, less than a second. Let's come back here. Let's rerun. Let's ignore that. Let's rerun this, right? So now I have 1800 and I have 360, which matches my 360 there. So if I've got multiple sets of entities, I can certainly run this. In the next video and next post, I'll show you how to deal with the problem of why don't I have batting and fielding and other statistics in here. But for now, Test Data Manager is a fantastic way to start using your systems. I've got some blog posts here on my blog, Voice of the DBA, and this TDM Auto Mascot is a public repo, so you can run your own demos and follow along with me. Steve Jones for Redgate Software and SQL Server Central.